The summer sun shimmered across the calm surface of the lake, a jewel of quiet beauty nestled beside David's ranch. For years, he had taken pride in the water that reflected both his sweat and his memories, countless mornings fishing at dawn, evenings watching the golden light fade, and even family barbecues where laughter echoed across the shore. But all of that peace shattered one morning when he woke to find heavy trucks, loud voices, and the distinct sound of men hammering in wooden posts. Confused, David hurried down the gravel path, only to be greeted with a sight that made his blood run cold. The HOA president, Karen, was standing smugly on the dock, handing out papers as if she owned the place. With arms crossed and a voice dripping with condescension, she announced to the crew, "This is private HOA property now. My son deserves his own lake house, and this ranch lake will finally serve a real purpose." David froze in disbelief. Private HOA property? His family had owned this land long before the HOA ever existed. Yet here she was, handing away his lake like it was some casual gift. Neighbors peered out of their windows, whispering, watching the drama unfold. Some shook their heads in sympathy, others in fear of Karen's wrath. She had ruled the HOA for years with an iron smile, using her influence to bully, intimidate, and manipulate, but this time, Karen had gone too far. David took a deep breath, his voice steady but sharp. "Karen, that lake is mine. You don't have the right to give it away." She smirked, waving the papers in her hand. "We'll see about that, ranch boy." And in that moment, David realized this was no ordinary fight. This was the beginning of a battle that would shake the entire neighborhood. David refused to let Karen's smug grin shake him. But as he looked around, he realized her game was far deeper than a simple power grab. She had already posted fresh HOA property, no trespassing signs along the path. The crew she hired carried clipboards with contracts stamped and signed, proof that she had been plotting this for weeks. His fists clenched. "How dare she, Karen? This lake is registered under my ranch." "My deed shows clear boundaries," he argued, holding his ground. "Oh, please," she scoffed, flicking her hand as if brushing away a fly. "The HOA budget maintains this area now. And as president, I decided to grant exclusive rights to my son. He'll finally have the lakefront he deserves. You can either accept it or take it up with the board." Her words stung, but something inside David clicked. Take it up with the board? The same board she controlled like puppets? He knew better. Karen had always silenced opposition with manipulation, favor trading, and fear, but she underestimated him. Later that evening, David pulled out his grandfather's leather folder, the one with every deed, tax receipt, and land survey from decades past. He traced the lines of the old maps, smiling grimly when he found what he needed, proof that the lake wasn't just on his ranch, it was entirely excluded from HOA jurisdiction. The next morning, he walked into the HOA meeting, documents in hand. The room hushed as Karen smirked from her chair, tapping her pen. "Back so soon, David? Ready to apologize for causing a scene?" He dropped the folder on the table. The papers fanned out like cards in a winning hand. "Actually," he said calmly, "I'm here to remind you who really owns this lake. And trust me, Karen. It's not you." The board members leaned forward, suddenly uneasy. For the first time in years, Karen's smile faltered. The silence in the boardroom stretched. Karen quickly recovered, adjusting her blazer, her lips curling into another confident smirk. "Nice papers, David. But ownership doesn't matter if the HOA budget has already been allocated. You think you can stop progress?" Her arrogance lit a fire in him. He glanced at the board members, men and women tired of her dominance, their eyes betraying doubt. For too long, they had followed her lead, believing she held all the power. David leaned in, his voice calm but firm. "What if I told you the budget isn't as untouchable as you think? What if I told you every cent the HOA spends passes through my bank first?" A collective gasp filled the room. Karen blinked, her confidence cracking. "That's ridiculous. The HOA funds come from homeowners' fees." David smiled. "True. But years ago, when this neighborhood was being developed, the builders negotiated access to the ranch roads, water lines, and electrical easements. Guess whose ranch those run through? Mine. Which means every time you pay the utility bills or file an expense, it clears through my system. I don't just own the lake, Karen, I control your entire budget." The room erupted in murmurs. Karen slammed her fist on the table. "You're bluffing." David pulled out a fresh stack of documents, bank statements, and contracts. He slid them across the table, each page a nail in the coffin of her authority. The board members examined the evidence, their loyalty shifting before Karen's eyes. David stood tall. "So, Karen, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop claiming my lake. You're going to retract those fake signs. And you're going to explain to your son why his so-called gift just vanished." Her face flushed red. For once, she was speechless. The power she thought she had never truly belonged to her. Karen's silence in that boardroom didn't last long. By the next morning, she was back on the offensive. Flyers appeared in every neighbor's mailbox, accusing David of financial manipulation and holding the community hostage. She twisted the truth, painting herself as the hero fighting for fairness while branding him as greedy. For years, this tactic had worked: bully, twist, and isolate anyone who dared oppose her. But this time, David was ready. When he walked through the neighborhood that afternoon, he saw clusters of neighbors whispering, the flyers clutched in their hands. Some looked at him with suspicion, others with quiet sympathy. It stung, but instead of lashing out, he smiled warmly and said, "If anyone wants the truth, come to the ranch tonight. Bring your questions. I'll show you everything." That evening, his barn lights glowed against the dusk as neighbors gathered. David stood in front of a table stacked with folders and binders, every page of proof neatly organized. One by one, he explained how the HOA's funds actually moved, why Karen had no claim to the lake, and how her reckless spending had nearly bankrupted the association last year. Murmurs turned into gasps as people flipped through receipts showing spa retreats billed as board meetings and expensive dinners listed as community development. By the end, the truth was undeniable. The very people she relied on to maintain her power now looked betrayed. Karen's son, who had strutted around bragging about his lake, quietly slipped out the back door. Humiliated, David didn't gloat. He simply said, "All I want is respect for what's mine. I won't let anyone, HOA or not, take it away." For the first time, the neighborhood saw Karen's empire crack. But David knew she wasn't finished yet. The following week, Karen tried a different tactic. If she couldn't win through intimidation, she would try sabotage. Early one morning, David found the ranch's main access road blocked by fresh barricades, stamped with an HOA seal. A bold sign read, "Private access, HOA residents only." Trucks couldn't get through, and even delivery drivers turned away in confusion. Karen stood nearby, sipping her coffee with mock innocence. "Oh, David. Seems the road is part of HOA maintenance now. Nothing personal, just rules." But David had anticipated this move. He pulled out his phone, showing her a city permit dated years prior, clearly marking the road as an easement owned and maintained by his ranch. Within hours, the county officials arrived, demanding the barricades be removed. Karen's smugness faltered as workers dismantled every post she had ordered. The neighbors watched in stunned silence. Some even clapped as the final barricade fell. But David wasn't satisfied with winning small battles. He wanted lasting peace. That night, sitting on his porch overlooking the reclaimed lake, he thought about his late father. His words echoed, "Son, land isn't just dirt. It's legacy. Protect it with dignity." David realized the fight wasn't about proving Karen wrong, it was about restoring respect and fairness to a neighborhood tired of her tyranny. The next HOA meeting, he didn't walk in angry. He walked in calm, prepared, and strategic. He requested a full financial audit of the HOA, backed by signatures from half the community. The board couldn't refuse. Karen's face drained of color. She knew what that audit would uncover, and for the first time, fear replaced her arrogance. The audit results were explosive. Weeks of digging revealed a trail of mismanagement, HOA funds diverted to Karen's personal projects, thousands spent on her son's hobbies, and inflated contracts signed with her relatives' businesses. What she had once hidden in layers of bureaucracy now lay exposed under fluorescent lights. The board members, once her silent allies, now turned on her. "You've abused your position," one said, shaking his head. Another added, "We trusted you, and you used us." Karen tried to argue, but the evidence was too damning. And then came the final blow. David revealed that his control of the budget wasn't just financial oversight. Years ago, the original developers had tied the HOA's financial accounts directly to the ranch utilities for administrative efficiency. Meaning, by contract, he was effectively the only one authorized to approve or reject large expenditures. Gasps rippled through the room. The power Karen thought was absolute had always rested with him. With the evidence stacked against her, the board voted unanimously to remove Karen as president. Her gavel, once a symbol of her dominance, was placed quietly on the table. She stood frozen, her pride crumbling. David didn't gloat. Instead, he addressed the room. This community deserves honesty. We can either live under fear or rebuild trust. The choice is ours. The neighbors erupted in applause. Some even came forward to shake his hand. For the first time, the community saw him not just as the rancher at the edge of town, but as the protector of their home. But Karen, humiliated and dethroned, wasn't finished yet. As she left the room, she hissed, "You may have one today, David. But this isn't over." Yet deep down, even she knew it was. Karen never recovered her power. Without the title, without the budget, and without the fear she once wielded, her influence vanished. Neighbors who once trembled at her knock now ignored her. Her son, embarrassed by the scandal, moved away quietly. And the lake, David's lake, stood untouched, shimmering in the sunlight as a symbol of victory and resilience. But David didn't stop there. With the community's support, he proposed reforms to the HOA, transparent budgets, fair elections, and open forums where every voice could be heard. The board embraced the changes, grateful for his leadership. One afternoon, as he stood by the water's edge, a group of children played nearby, their laughter carrying across the lake. Parents relaxed on the grass, chatting about plans for the neighborhood's future. For the first time in years, the air felt lighter, freer. A neighbor approached him, smiling warmly. "David, you didn't just save your lake. You saved all of us." He nodded, humbled. "This was never about me. It was about respect, something no HOA title can give or take away." The story of how Karen tried to steal his lake but instead lost her entire empire spread far beyond the neighborhood. It became a tale of justice, a reminder that truth and persistence could outshine arrogance and lies. And as the sun set over the calm waters, David knew his father would be proud. The lake was still his. The land was still his. But now, the community was his too, not by ownership, but by trust, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.